Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So thank you everyone for joining. So we'll be discussing some pastimes of Ishwar Puri today. So this is a verse, what we read is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila. And the first verse, text 10 that we read actually says that how Sri Madhavendra Puri is actually the seed of devotional service, first fructified in Madhavendra Puri. He is the desired tree of devotional service, Bhakti Kalpataru. Right? So Prabhupada explains the point in purport that he comes in the line of Madhvacharya, one of the four Vaishnava traditions. But up to that point, before Madhavendra Puri, there was not even a tinge of love of Godhead, particularly a particular rasa, right? Which is actually the mood of separation from Krishna. That kind of love was actually not present. It was Madhavendra Puri who actually that seed of devotion which actually has that mood of separation from Krishna, that actually fructified first in Madhavendra Puri. And then it was passed over to his disciple Srila Ishwar Puri and then to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? Hence in this purport, Prabhupada actually quotes the verse, Ei Dina Dayardhanata. And this is actually the prayer that Srimati Radharani actually sings in separation from Lord Sri Krishna. When Lord Sri Krishna went to Mathura, Radharani was feeling that intense pain of separation. And in that mood, she called out, Hey Dina Dayanath, oh Krishna, where are you? You know, I'm feeling that pangs of separation. And imbibing that same mood, you know, Madhavendra Puri exhibited that mood of bhakti, that mood of devotion. The text 11 says, the seed of devotional service next fructified in the form of Ishwar Puri. So Madhavendra Puri's disciple is Ishwar Puri. And it is described here that why Ishwar Puri received the special gift, the special seed of that love of God and in the mood of separation. So Prabhupada talks about how when Madhavendra Puri became an invalid, he was completely unable to move, then Ishwar Puri engaged in complete service to his spiritual master. It's described here. Prabhupada is describing this is in the Antya Lila. It said that when Ishwar Puri used to render such humble service, he used to go and clean the stool and urine of his spiritual master. And at the same time, he used to always chant the holy name of Krishna and in that way assist his spiritual master in his meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So Prabhupada says Ishwar Puri gave the best service among his disciples. Right? Always chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and reminding Ishwar Puri about the pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. And thus Madhavendra Puri became very pleased with him. And what was the benediction that Madhavendra Puri gave? He said, my dear boy, I can only pray to Krishna that he will be pleased with you. He will be pleased with you. Right? So that is a special benediction that we receive from the spiritual master. When the spiritual master is pleased with us, he says, oh Krishna, this person has served me so nicely. Please bestow your mercy upon him. You know? And in that way, Ishwar Puri actually received the special gift of that bhakti in the mood of separation. That bhakti in the mood of love of Godhead. And Prabhupada further explains that our principle is, Yasya prasada, Bhagavad prasada. You please the spiritual master, then Krishna is pleased. If you do not please the spiritual master, then there is no hope of advancement in spiritual life. Okay. Now, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada actually points out that how before initiating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ishwar Puri actually went to Navadvip and lived for a few months in the house of Gopinath Acharya. So this is actually described in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So I'm going to read a little bit. So it is described that how when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes as Nimai Pandit, you know, as a scholar, right? Nimai Pandit, the scholar, the great scholar, describes that how he used to always, even with devotees, he used to actually always, like when they used to say something, he used to challenge them, you know, in rules of grammar. You know, oh, you said this, but This is a rule of grammar. And then he used to challenge them, and the devotee used to like explain, no, no, this is how it is. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to defeat that, right? And that way he was always engaged in this conversation of like grammar, like defeating his devotees. And all the devotees, they just wanted to hear about Krishna, chant the name of Krishna, have kirtan. And they used to always think, when will this Nimai Pandit? Actually, everyone was attracted to Nimai Pandit because he was so beautiful that everyone felt natural attraction for Nimai Pandit. But when they used to see that how he was just engaged in this grammar and just going back and forth in debate, they used to always pray, when will this Nimai Pandit become a devotee? So this is actually described here. So there's also a story of, this is in Adi Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adi chapter 11, described that once Mukunda, Mukunda used to sing beautiful devotional songs for Lord Krishna. So one Mukunda was singing such very nice devotional song. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to him and challenged him. And then again, like Mukunda was not interested. So at a later day, once Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was coming, Mukunda came from the other direction. And as soon as he saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he turned and he walked away. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was with the students. And he asked the student, why did Mukunda turn away seeing me? And then the student said, maybe he remembered some work he remembered in that direction. And said, no, Mukunda is a real devotee of Krishna. Hence, he does not want to engage with me in this conversation of grammar. But just see, one day I'll become such a great devotee that even Brahma and Shiva will worship me. Imagine someone saying like this. But it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he actually made this point, that one day he'll actually become such a great devotee. And when did this transformation in the character of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually occur? Is when he actually met Ishwar Puri. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through his example, is teaching us such an important lesson, that even though he was such a great learned scholar, Nimai Pandit, the great, he defeated Keshav Kashmiri, but he did not actually exhibit that mood for which his mission was actually to come and prema aswadhana. He has to taste the love of Godhead and then distribute it to everyone. That real mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did not actually exhibit until he met his spiritual master. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing that importance of accepting a spiritual master, and said, like how Prabhupada said that in the purport, that it is Ishwar Puri who actually gave him that gift of that love of God, that seed of love of God. But one way we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself in the mood of Radharani, but he's teaching us such an important lesson here. So, anyone has any comments of this point? Nimai Pandit. Yeah. Before, yes. This is called Nimai Pandit. So he also had a school, he used to teach grammar to his students. And that's why the pastime of he defeating Keshav Kashmiri the Great. Right? Okay. Yes, Mata, please. Yes, very nice point. Mother Krishnapriya is actually making the point that it's actually when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached Ishwar Puri for initiation. Actually, at that point, so it comes later in Chaitanya Bhagavat. At that point, so this was, so initially, so I'll just name the main incidences that are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat. One is when Ishwar Puri actually came to Navadvip, right? And this is that's when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first met Ishwar Puri. Right? And he stayed in the house of Gopinath Acharya. So that's described in that purport. So there he stayed for a few days, and that's where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu served Ishwar Puri. He used to invite Ishwar Puri to his house, serve him lunch, and serve him meal. And then later on, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Gaya, and he actually went to Gaya to perform the Pinda ceremony for his father, right? The ceremony for the departed forefathers. So he went to Gaya to perform that Shraddha ceremony. So when after there was when he again met Ishwar Puri. And that's where he actually, got initiated from Ishwar Puri. Right? So Ishwar Puri had already met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navdeep, and then his second meeting was in Gaya. And by that time, Ishwar Puri was already thinking that this person is, it comes later in Chaitanya Bhagavat, that this person must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because since I met him in Navdeep, I cannot but think about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You know. So even Ishwar Puri knew that this is none other than Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached Ishwar Puri and said like, oh, please give me initiation. He said, for you, I'll just give my life because you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually tells the Gopal mantra, the 10-syllable Gopal mantra, to Ishwar Puri, and then Ishwar Puri actually repeats it to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In that way, it gives initiation. Okay. So there's this section I wanted to discuss. So, so this chapter is actually describing, chapter 11, how Ishwar Puri stayed in Navdvip in the house of Advait Acharya. Was that true? No, Gopinath Acharya. He actually, so the story here is actually described. Then when Ishwar Puri went to Navadvip, he wasn't dressed as such like a Vaishnava, you know. And then he went to the house of Advait Acharya. Who is Advait Acharya, spiritual master? Madhavendra Puri. So yeah, so he actually went to the house of Advait Acharya because like God brother, same spiritual master. So Ishwar Puri went to the house of Advait Acharya, but he was just sitting outside, and he wasn't in a dress of a Vaishnava, and he was just observing Advait Acharya was doing his worship. So Ishwar Puri was just seeing Advait Acharya doing his worship, but Advait Acharya could feel that this person is not he's a very special person, you know. So at that time, Mukunda started singing verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, singing the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And as soon as Mukunda started singing these verses, immediately Ishwar Puri, he was in ecstasy and he was crying tears, and then he fainted in that way. And Advaita Acharya realized this is a very special Vaishnava, you know. And then Advaita Acharya actually, yeah. At the sound of Mukunda singing entering the ears, Sri Ishwapuri fell to the ground. Incessant tears flowed from his eyes, and the waves of his love increased again and again. Advaita Acharya hastily took him in his arms, and his entire body became wet with tears. The symptoms of ecstatic love continued to increase rather than diminish as Mukunda began to loudly recite appropriate verses. The Vaishnava's heart were filled with incomparable happiness as they saw their transformations of ecstatic love. In this way, as Ishwar Puri wandered about in Navdeep in disguise, no one was able to recognize him. You know, so that's described as the first meeting of Ishwar Puri with Advaita Acharya. Okay, and then it's described as how Ishwar Puri met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then when Ishwar Puri saw Nimai's features, he could understand that Nimai was a most grave and exalted personality. So even first time Ishwar Puri saw Nimai Pandit, he understood this is a very exalted personality. Right? Okay. And then it's described that how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he served Ishwar Puri, personally he used to serve him prasadam. And then, okay, so the next pastime that's described is once Ishwar Puri came to Nimai Pandit and he asked Nimai Pandit that can you read, the writing that Ishwar Puri was writing and make some corrections because you're expert in grammar, right? So you can actually read my writing and make some corrections to it and see if there are any mistakes in the writing, right? At that time, Nimai Pandit, he actually makes this point. This is very beautiful. The Lord replied, whoever finds fault in a devotee's description of Lord Krishna is a sinful person. Krishna is certainly pleased with his devotees' poetry, even though it is imperfectly composed. And then he says, an uneducated person may chant. Okay, so he gives an example. One who finds fault with a devotee is himself at fault, for a devotee's descriptions are meant only for the pleasure of Krishna. Therefore, who will dare find fault with your devotional description of Krishna's pastime? Hearing Nimai's reply was like shower of nectar on the body of Ishwar Puri. Right? So we read this also in Bhagavatam, right? In the first canto, fifth chapter, we read this verse: Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shloka abadyavatyapi namani anantasya yashwankitani cha shrinvanti gayanti grananti sadhava. So Prabhupada actually quotes this in the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Every canto in the starting, we see Prabhupada has this as a preface. Right? And what is this verse saying? That even if there are mistakes in the composition, the writing of the pure devotees, one should ignore the mistakes. Why? Tadvag visargo janataga visargo. Because this is a totally different creation. This is completely spiritual words. It has nothing to do with mundane grammar or logic. You know? And later on is described further in the first canto when the ladies in Hastinapur, so it's described when Krishna actually, after from Hastinapur, he went to Dwarka, then the ladies of Hastinapur, they actually were singing different glorifications of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada mentions that point in the purport, though they were like simple ladies, you know, not so expert in Shastra, but because they were just composing the glorification from their heart, Prabhupada says this is actually more important than all the Vedic hymns. You know, because it's a devotion. That's actually that counts. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching another very important point is that for a devotee, even if there are some grammatical errors, one should actually not see faults in the writing of the devotee because they are completely imbued with devotion, with bhakti bhav. Right? Okay. Any comments up to this point? Anyone would like to share anything? Any realizations? Okay. So that was the pastime of Ishwar Puri when he actually came to Navadvip. And then is described, whoever hears the auspicious topics about Sri Ishwar Puri lives at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So just by reading this chapter, Vrindavan Das Thakur is giving the benediction. Whoever hears the auspicious topics about Sri Ishwar Puri lives at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So that's the Falshruti of this chapter. And right. Okay, so that's the chapter here. Then the next description is of Ishwar Puri at Gaya. Right? Ishwar Puri at Gaya. Yes, so when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to perform the Shraddha ceremony, there is described that there's a description of how he went to so many different places in Gaya. He was doing all different kinds of Shraddha ceremony. And then once he actually went to a place where there was a lotus feet of Vishnu. You know, lotus feet of Vishnu was there. And just seeing that, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was feeling all these emotions of ecstasy, his love for Krishna. You know, he was feeling that mood. And at that place, Ishwar Puri actually arrived. Ishwar Puri arrived at that place. You know. So there's a description here. Yeah. As the Lord looked at those lotus feet, tears flowed from his lotus eyes. His hair stood on end and he began shivering. Okay. Lord Gaurachandra then began to manifest ecstatic devotional service for the benefit of the whole world. Right? And then described by the divine will of the Supreme Lord, at that moment, Sri Ishwar Puri arrived at that place. Right? And on seeing Ishwar Puri, Sri Gaurasundar respectfully offered him obeisances. Ishwar Puri was also delighted to see Gaurachandra and he happily embraced him. In the ecstasy of meeting each other, they both became soaked with tears of love. So how beautiful description of meeting of Ishwar Puri and Lord Chaitanya. And the Lord said, my journey to Gaya became successful the moment I saw your lotus feet. You know? And this actually in this purport, There's a beautiful bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which actually says, Tirtha Phala Sadhu Sangha Ananta Ranga, Shri Krishna Bhajana Manohara. The real benefit of visiting any holy place is to achieve the association of the pure-hearted devotees of the Lord living there. So another very important lesson, you know. The Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he went to Gaya, he performed all the Shraddha ceremony. But he's saying the real purpose of my coming to Gaya is actually to get your association, to actually see your lotus feet, right? And this is described in a lot. Prabhupada also often quotes that word. Yeah, so Gokarha is the last word that basically says that when one goes to a holy place, what is the purpose of the holy place? One should seek out saintly people living in the holy place and take their association. Right? When Vidura traveled to different holy places and came back to Hastinapur, Yudhishthir Maharaj, he glorified Vidura. He actually said, Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirthi Bhuta Swayam Vibhu Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Swanta Stena Gadapritaha. He welcomed Vidura by saying, you yourself are holy places. You yourself are holy place personified. Wherever you go, that is a holy place. So real purpose of holy place is actually to go and associate with devotees there. My Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified. Why? Because you carry the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your heart. You turn all places into places of pilgrimage. And then here we see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying, please deliver me from the ocean of material existence. I surrender myself unto you. The Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is surrendering himself unto Ishwarpuri. I beg that you make me drink the nectar of Krishna's lotus feet. So here it says, Balenu Ishwarapuri Sunaha Pandita Tumi ye Ishwara Amsa Janinu Nishita Tumi e Ishwara Anga. You yourself are actually Ishwara. Janinu Nishita. I know for sure. So Ishwarpuri is telling, listen dear Pandita, I know without doubt that you are actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So Ishwarpuri knew that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. And then, okay, here is saying, from the time I saw you in Nadia, my heart has no other attraction. And speaking the truth, nothing else. When I see you, I feel the happiness of seeing Krishna. Ishwarpuri is saying, when I see you, oh Nimai Pandit, I feel the same happiness as if I'm seeing Krishna himself. Hearing his beloved Ishwarpuri's truthful words, the Lord smiled and said, it is my great fortune. In this way, the two exchanged many other pleasing words, which will be described further. Okay. Now, another wonderful pastime is here described that once in Gaya, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had prepared an offering, right? And then he was actually offering it to his deities. And at that time, Ishwarpuri arrived. Right? So he just made the offering and then Ishwarpuri arrived at that time. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately invited Ishwarpuri and whatever was prepared, he gave it to Ishwarpuri. And Ishwarpuri was saying that, because he had just prepared for just one person. Right? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just prepared enough quantity for one person. So when Ishwarpuri came in, he said, here, please, you came at the perfect time. I want to serve you. And Ishwarpuri said, whatever you have prepared, we'll divide half and half. Right? You take half, I'll take half. Otherwise, if I take everything, what will you eat? And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, you are here, first you take. Right? And we see that mood again, like, the beautiful thing about the interactions of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ishwarpuri is we learn so much of how a disciple should serve a spiritual master. What is the mood of a disciple to a spiritual master? And the same between Ishwarpuri and Madhavendra Puri. How a disciple serves a spiritual master. And then it's described. So as soon as the Lord finished cooking, Sri Ishwarpuri arrived there. Ishwarpuri's head was rolling back and forth in ecstatic love in the names of Krishna. The Lord immediately left the kitchen and after respectfully offering obeisances, he seated Ishwarpuri comfortably. Ishwarpuri smiled and said, "Listen, O Pandit, I see I have come at the right time." The Lord replied, "It will be my good fortune if you accept your meal here." Then Ishwarpuri said, "What is the need for cooking again? Divide whatever you have in two portions." The Lord smiled and said, "If you really want to please me, then eat whatever I have cooked. I will cook again within a moment. You take your meal without hesitation." Right? So the Lord then gave his meal to Ishwarpuri, and then it's described that how Rama Devi, consort of the Lord, she actually came and she cooked for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't have to cook again. Rama Devi, like the consort of the Lord. She came and she cooked for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he had offered everything to his spiritual master. Rama Devi. Then, after Lord first fed Ishwarpuri, he happily ate himself. One who hears about the Lord taking his meal with Ishwarpuri will achieve the wealth of love of Krishna. So beautiful pastimes and so powerful. It's saying that just by reading this one pastime, Vrindavan Das Thakur is saying, Ishwarapuri sange prabhura bhojana ihara shravane mile Krishna prema dhana. Just by hearing this pastime, one will actually get the wealth of love of Krishna. So we discussed few different pastimes. There's one other thing I'll mention, and then we'll see if there's yeah. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Prakashan and the Saraswati, there was this conversation between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Oh, is it clock? It says 14. Okay, so we'll stop here. Srila Ishwarpuri ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvanda Aravindalayatatam Bhagavatam Samasitam Purasundarata Kandar Hatom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Aslasakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Vikayanti Viranti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Dala Vikrasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Chami